You're listening to Bad Girlfriend Radio. I'm your host, Bree Schmidt. I'm a relationship coach and educator offering advice and insight that is no shame, no sugarcoat, and no BS. You've probably heard the word needy thrown around almost always as a negative quality, but when are needs in a relationship completely valid and normal? And when are they too much? Today, I'll be talking all about being needy, how to get your needs met, and more, so keep on listening. Do you enjoy listening to Bad Girlfriend Radio, but what you really want is a chance to talk one-on-one about dating and relationships? If you are ready to start thriving in dating and your love life, I am here to coach you in personalized coaching sessions that are all about you, and all you need is an internet connection. I offer coaching through private video calls as well as through email, and you can book your first consultation call with me for free if you just head over to breeschmidt.com and tap Work With Me, or you can find the link over in this episode's show description. We'll get deep into the thought patterns and limiting beliefs that are holding you back, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset to gain confidence and empower yourself to live as your highest, best bad girlfriend self in your love life. I'll give you action steps, worksheets, and resources to keep you engaged in growth throughout the whole process. And all of this is tailor-made for you and your needs and your goals. And hey, it doesn't matter if you're single or in a relationship or married. This is about you showing up the way that you want to, no matter your relationship status. Whether you are looking to start dating with confidence, heal through your breakup, or stop fighting with your partner, I am here to work with you. So go to breeschmidt.com and tap Work With Me, or go find the link in this episode's show description. Now, on to today's discussion. So for today's episode, I wanted to focus in on needs and the term needy and neediness, because I have a lot of thoughts on this subject, and really I could have probably just made this a short 5-minute episode where I basically just say that being needy is okay. Stop shaming yourself or each other for having needs. Done. End of discussion. But that probably wouldn't be so helpful or insightful, so let's dive into this topic a little bit more. I think when it comes to the topic of needs and how to get your needs met in a relationship, being needy, there are some different perspectives and sometimes opposing advice being handed out online or on social media, and it can get a little bit confusing. So some people like to suggest that no one can fulfill your needs except for you. You are the only one who can or should meet your own needs. You should just learn to satisfy your own needs independently. And this does sound ideal, because then you can just meet your own needs all the time without depending on, anyone else to do that for you, without having to face disappointment if they fail to meet your needs. So, it sounds like a pretty good idea, right? But the truth is, it is okay to have needs that require depending on someone else for them to be met. It is okay to trust others with your needs, even if that means that you might face disappointment at times when they don't meet your needs exactly as you want them to. You may think that the goal should be for you to fulfill all of your own needs by yourself, but I would argue that that may actually be a kind of unhealthy goal to have. Like I said, I think it sounds nice and it sounds really ideal to be able to be completely self-sufficient, but you were not brought into this world to just be self-sufficient. You literally had to depend on the well-being and the health of your mother while you were in the womb, and then one way or another, you had to be birthed from her body. Either she pushed you out herself or a doctor helped in getting you out, but trust me, you did not bring yourself into this world independently, and you don't need to go through your life on this earth trying to do everything for yourself, by yourself. As a child, too, you were vulnerable and you had to depend on whoever was around to care for you and teach you things and, be there to support you, even if maybe those people didn't always care for you exactly as you wanted them to or as you deserved. Either way, those needs that you had were still completely valid. Maybe you were ignored by your parents who were too wrapped up in their own struggles or busyness, and maybe they didn't always provide the attention that you needed. But that doesn't mean that your need for attention wasn't valid. Maybe at school, you were picked on sometimes and you were excluded from your classmates, but that doesn't mean that your need for inclusion wasn't valid. Maybe your childhood was actually overall pretty free of trauma and your needs were all met, but you still learned at one point or another that you need to be completely independent and self-reliant. But the truth is, your needs for connection and closeness are still valid. But you might just be burying those needs. There could be a lot of shame around our needs. I have an amazing audience of strong, intelligent, bold women, but I do see a pattern for some of these women where they think that having needs makes them weak. They worry that needing something from someone else will cause them to break and fall apart. And that fear is especially true if they've needed something from someone in the past and that person didn't come through. Then they might fear that the next person will let them down, or the next person, or the next person. So what do? They just try to tell themselves that they don't actually need that thing anymore. They'll just take care of it themselves. Then they never really have to open up and be vulnerable and possibly be hurt again. But your needs are valid, not shameful. Having needs does not make you weak. But if you believe that these needs are a problem, or maybe you worry about others labeling you as being too needy, then you might have learned to hide your needs. I see this all the time. People hide so much of who they are and what they need, especially in the early stages of dating and forming a relationship. Then later, finally, they explode. But what if you open up about your feelings and your needs from the beginning? What if you own your needs without shame? You own them confidently and you clearly ask for what you need from the very start. Now, as I talk about these needs kind of vaguely, you might be wondering what they really are. So I'm going to break it down for you, and I'm going to break down the needs that are completely healthy to have in a relationship, even in the beginning stages of a relationship. And then I'll also talk about needs that maybe you don't need to depend on someone else to meet, because there is a difference between the two. So first, let's talk about the needs in a relationship that are completely healthy and normal and valid. And like I was saying before about when you were younger and you had to depend on other people, these are needs that are just part of being human. They are more or less just natural, innate needs. If you listened to my episode before on loneliness, then this may be no surprise, but the first need is connection. Humans need connection. We are social creatures and we rely very heavily on others, especially throughout the first several years of our lives. And then just because you grew up, that doesn't mean that your need for connection just vanishes. A need for connection is woven into us. I'm starting to sound a little bit more woo-woo than usual, but just stick with me for a minute. It might sound kind of bleak, but being disconnected from others can literally change your brain and your body. Disconnection can make you sick. And connection doesn't just come from being around other people. It doesn't just come from having someone next to you. So if you're interested in hearing more about this and what connection really is, you can go back to episode 24 and listen there, where I talk a lot more about building connection. So connection requires other people. Although, like I just said, it doesn't only require having someone around you. You can feel alone and disconnected in a crowd as well. But it does require other people. So anyone who says that you should just try to meet all of your needs on your own, they are completely ignoring our need for connection. And I would say that most, if not all, relationships that end in a breakup or divorce lacked connection. Connection is so important and it's crucial in maintaining a healthy relationship. So connection is a very important human need. But connection is pretty hard to maintain if there's a lack of belonging and acceptance. So this is the next need that I want to address, belonging and acceptance. And it is very closely related to connection. But I would say connection is kind of like maybe the umbrella, and belonging and acceptance are under that umbrella of connection. So again, feeling like you belong in a group and you're accepted as you are is a very natural need for survival. Especially in the past, humans really depended on their social group to survive, or else you would be left out by yourself in the jungle to die, okay? Now, these days, you probably don't belong to a group of cavemen or a tribe that you depend on to survive, but we still have this deep need to belong and be accepted somewhere. And when it comes to who you enter into a relationship with, a romantic relationship especially, this need definitely comes up. We want to feel like our partner loves us and accepts us as we are, and that they make space for us. It can be really frustrating trying to date someone who is really busy, or they have so many other friends that there isn't much space left for you. And of course, having interests and plans outside of the relationship is important for sure. But I hear many women complaining about trying to date someone who can't even really seem to make time for them. The other person has way too many competing priorities. And then the woman, their partner, starts to feel like maybe they aren't a priority. And this concern is completely valid because, after all, the need for belonging is completely valid. If your partner is constantly juggling family events and work outings and hanging out with their friends, and then they leave very little time for you, that's something worth discussing with them, absolutely. Your need for feeling like you belong with them, that you kind of have your own unity, your own team together in a sense, is okay. It is normal and valid. And I touched on acceptance as well, which is also very important in relationships, because being with someone who criticizes you and is always trying to change you can feel dehumanizing. So if you find someone like that, that is probably not your person. So another need that can go under the kind of connection umbrella is understanding and compassion. We need to feel understood, and we need to be met with compassion when we open up. And again, this is something that you can't just fulfill on your own. It is a valid relationship-based need. You can absolutely have compassion for yourself, but let's say that you're in a relationship and you're feeling really down, and you open up to your partner and they kind of just don't care, or they don't understand why you're upset at all. They're telling you to just get over it, or they're trying to tell you what you're doing wrong, and they're not really listening to you. We all deserve to be heard, period. From working with and talking to a variety of people, I know that most of us really just want someone to listen to us, someone to validate our feelings and experiences, and someone to show up with compassion. If you have a partner who is emotionally unavailable, or who gaslights you and treats you like you're crazy when you're upset about something, you will know firsthand how painful this can be. But some of us might start to believe that this need to be heard and this need for compassion isn't so important. We may start to believe that we should just deal with our problems silently on our own. To this, I want to say, this kind of relationship is typically much lonelier than if you were single. You know, being single isn't a bad thing. And this is one of those times where it would probably serve you better than settling for a relationship where your needs for compassion are ignored. Another valid and healthy need in relationships is a need for authenticity. You can be yourself. You don't have to hide parts of yourself to keep the other person comfortable. And along with this, you can also be honest. You can practice clear communication. You can ask for what you need. You can express your true feelings and thoughts. And then connected to that is also a need for trust. Trust is such an important relationship need. And sometimes people throw around the term trust issues. They'll kind of, I want to say, kind of abuse that phrase a little bit, trust issues. And it's true that some of us may struggle with trust more than others, but by simplifying it as just, oh, she has trust issues, he has trust issues, it kind of ignores the trauma that may have triggered these issues in the first place. Building trust requires two people. So if you do struggle with trusting people in general, this is a pattern that you have identified in your life, then there may be some work that you have to do on your end. But also the other person has to be trustworthy. If you're struggling to trust someone and they've betrayed you in some way, it is not your responsibility alone to rebuild that broken trust. So don't minimize your need for trust in a relationship. And remember that building this trust isn't dependent on just one person. You can't force yourself to trust someone who hasn't demonstrated their trustworthiness. And you can't force yourself to trust someone who has broken your trust, right? Now, trust and betrayal is a much bigger topic, so if you want me to cover this more deeply in a future episode, then let me know. You can DM me on Instagram. I'm at Bree_Schmidt, or you can send me an email at contact@breeschmidt.com to let me know if this is something that you want to hear more of, or any other topic for that matter. Now, there's one last need that I want to discuss that is completely normal and valid and healthy in relationships, and that has to do with needs for safety and security. Feeling safe in a relationship is so important, and emotional safety kind of relates back to a lot of the things that we already covered, so compassion and trust. But physical safety cannot be forgotten about. It is crucial that you feel physically safe in your relationship. If you feel that there is any danger or any threat to your physical safety and your partner doesn't take that concern seriously, this is a huge red flag. Now, I know that many of us might be thinking of physical or maybe sexual abuse, which is absolutely grounds for leaving a relationship, 100%. But I want you to also consider other ways that someone may feel unsafe in a relationship that may be less obvious. Maybe a partner who drives too fast, even after you tell them to slow down. Or someone who pressures you to drink more than you're comfortable with. Anything that doesn't respect your need for physical safety and well-being is a red flag. You are not overreacting if you want your partner to be a more careful driver, for example. Or you're not being too uptight if you don't want to drink a lot. Whatever it may be, your need and that gut feeling that you have is important and valid. All right, so far I've talked about needs that should be honored in a relationship. These are needs that may seem really basic, like physical safety or just simply a need for connection, but so often these needs get minimized. You may have been told at some point that your insistence on honoring one of these needs made you too difficult or too sensitive or too needy, but that's an issue with them. That's an issue with that person, not with you. And when people try to minimize your needs, it may be because they can't meet those needs. They can't give you what you need and deserve. Or it could be that they were never taught that this is a valid need. Maybe they have a need for connection or trust deep down too, but they've learned to quiet their own needs. Maybe as a child, their needs were ignored, or in a previous relationship, they were ignored. So they've learned to start ignoring their own needs too. And then as a result, they ignore your needs. But none of this is your problem. It's theirs. These needs are okay. Honoring them is necessary in building a healthy relationship. You are not too needy or too clingy if you need connection and compassion and understanding and honesty from someone. You are not asking for too much if you ask for their attention. You are not asking for too much if you ask for them to make time for you. But still, many people have learned that honoring these needs is shameful, or that it's too vulnerable, it's too dangerous to allow someone else to meet these needs. Because what if they don't? What if they let us down? But this is exactly what it means to have a relationship. Think of these needs as a thread between you and the other person. This thread connects you to them, and this thread allows you to feel seen and acknowledged, and that there is some kind of mutual understanding and belonging between you two. But still, you're two separate people. I'm talking about a thread connecting you, not a rope. This thread isn't meant to limit you or tie you down or hurt you. It's not demanding anything from anyone, but it's staying open to your own needs and allowing the other person to meet them. And if they don't, well, that's fine. You can let them go. The thread is light enough to allow you to maintain your own identity, and the other person has their own identity and choices. And if you aren't able to honor each other's needs and who the other person is, then let the thread go. A rope, on the other hand, ties you and the other person tightly together. Your well-being starts to depend solely on them. You may see the other person as a cure, like some kind of medicine to your problems or your unhappiness. If you have an argument or a disagreement with them, then you may feel like your whole life is falling apart. Without them, maybe your self-esteem suffers and your confidence takes a hit. You may lose sight of where you end and where they begin. And that rope is a lot harder to cut than just a simple thread. Like, you need a saw to cut through the rope. So consider, are you going into dating and relationships with a thread or with a rope? Or are you trying to maintain distance and space between you so that there is nothing to connect you? There is no thread, there is no rope, it's just open space. And you're trying to remain entirely separate and trying to be completely self-sufficient and not allowing others to see and meet your needs. Take some time to think about that and where you may stand and maybe how you approach your needs in relationships. And before I wrap up today's discussion on this topic, I wanted to talk about bids. This is a term that John Gottman talks about a lot, and I've mentioned him and the Gottman Institute in previous episodes. And the idea of bids is that we make bids. These are kind of like requests for attention and love. So you may be feeling like you need some connection and you want to talk to your partner. But, typically when you're feeling like this, most of us don't turn to our partner and say like, hey, talk to me. I want attention and connection right now, right? So instead, you make a bid. You may just start talking to them to start that conversation that you want. So your bid might be commenting on your day at work or how the weather is or a trip that you want to go on or anything at all. Then your partner has 3 options. They can turn towards your bid, they can turn away, or turn against. So turning towards the bid would be where they would respond to engage and connect with you more. So they are seeing your bid and they are receptive to it. If you start talking about a trip that you want to take to France, maybe, then they will respond like, yeah, that would be fun. What part of France should we go to? Or what do you want to do there? That would be turning towards. They're engaging with you. They're seeing that you want their attention or you want to start a conversation, and so they're responding to that. Now, if they turn away, then they may give you a short response and it doesn't really allow the conversation to continue. And if they turn against, then it might be something like them complaining that you don't have the money to take a trip. Why would you even suggest that? That is turning against, like just shutting it down. So I wanted to talk about bids in this episode because for some of you, you may feel like your needs aren't being met and you're not really sure why. Like, you are recognizing your own needs. You're not really ashamed of them. You think that they're important. You think that they're valid, but they're just not getting met. With something like a need for trust, it may be obvious to you that this need isn't being met if you've been betrayed. That's a bit obvious. But maybe you have a need for belonging and connection and compassion, and this need isn't really being met in your relationship, but you can't pinpoint exactly why. It's not so obvious. So having a partner who regularly is turning away or against your bids might be the reason why. So even if you're honoring your needs and your partner isn't downright disrespecting them, you may still be feeling unsatisfied if they aren't turning towards your bids. So I hope today's discussion gave you a different perspective on being needy, or that it helped to solidify some of the needs that you have. And the coaching that I offer is holistic in the sense that it looks at other areas of people's lives that may be impacting their relationships and vice versa. So remember, a healthy relationship and a healthy connection is not a rope tying you down to each other. It's a thread that keeps you open to each other and that allows space for you to maintain friendships and family relationships and, other interests that don't necessarily interfere with the quality of your relationship with your partner. So basically what I mean is that these other relationships and interests aren't there to water down your relationship with your partner or make you need less connection from your partner. But basically these outside relationships and interests may help in getting your needs met from multiple sources too. Does that make sense? So rather than just depending on one person for everything, you can feel a sense of belonging when you're with your friends and family too, not only with your partner. Or rather than depending on your partner for a confidence boost, you can have a hobby or a career that gives you a confidence boost. Get that from something that allows you to use your abilities and your strengths, not from a person. So keep in mind the needs that I mentioned today for connection, trust, safety, authenticity. You do not need to sacrifice those, period. Do not sacrifice them. And also know that whatever needs you have don't need to come exclusively from one person or thing. Your needs are valid. Being needy isn't such a bad thing. You are not broken for being needy. Honor your needs. Communicate them. Throw out that thread to the other person and be open to allowing someone to care for you and meet your needs. You do not need to be a superhuman resisting your needs for human connection and love, okay? It is okay to allow someone the chance to help meet those needs. And if you have any questions about today's episode, send me a message and let me know. Again, you can DM me on Instagram at Bree_Schmidt, or you can email me at contact@breeschmidt.com. These links and more are in the show description. Thanks for listening as always. Until next time.